Why magic?
Because it represents something that's amazing. Because it's a world where I can defy the rules of reality. It's the one world that exists where when you are in that world, the reality of that world is completely negotiable. In the reality that we often find ourselves in, the one we live in now, we can't make things float. You can't make things disappear. You can't make things reappear. It's not possible. Whereas in the world of magic, this reality, it's bendable, it's negotiable. You can do whatever you want with it. And I loved living in a world where that was the case. So that was just, to me, such an addictive quality of this art form. And it can seem a bit cheesy, but it was a world where anything was possible, which was so cool, right? It really spoke to my inner child. And I think that's where so many of my values are. It's why I feel I find myself living the life I live now. It's because I've always had those qualities in the world of magic bleed through to my reality. I didn't want to live the way everyone else lived. I didn't want to do what my parents did. I didn't want to do what my uncles and aunties did. I didn't want to follow and pursue the career path that my friends were pursuing. I didn't want to do that. I wanted something else. I wanted something that was more bendable, more negotiable.
You're listening to another episode of Success with Purpose, where we hold conversations with the most holistically successful people we have the opportunity to connect with. We explore their journeys, their life-changing events, their perspectives, their mindset, and most importantly, their purpose. I'm Harry Goldberg, host, interviewer, and interrogator of this podcast. Father of the most incredible daughter in the world, husband of an incredible woman, and director and empowerment coach at Purpose Advisory. Hope you enjoy this episode, and don't forget to subscribe and like below. Now, let's begin. So Vin, awesome to have you here. I normally do an in-depth introduction for each of my guests, listing their accomplishments and journeys. When I started doing that for you, I realized I'll be talking for like 5 minutes nonstop. And I don't believe that's what people want to hear. They'd much rather hear you.
I thought you were going to say, I just didn't have anything to talk about.
How about I'll do a short version?
Sure.
So Vin, you're the son of Vietnamese immigrants, parents who fled to Australia with almost nothing. And while they wanted you to become a pharmacist, an accountant, a lawyer, or a doctor, you became a magician, an entrepreneur, an international keynote speaker, educator to over, I believe it's over 800,000 students from around the world now as well. And what I really respect about you, though, is that you've done this without forgetting your roots, without neglecting your family, and while being a present and loving husband and father. So I've loved every conversation we've had so far. I can't wait for this one, especially given it's being recorded and shared with the world. So maybe the first question I'll ask you is, Vin, how do you define success?
Wow, I didn't think we were going to go so deep so quickly. But I think I have a very simplified version now, as I am in my mid-30s. To me, success at the moment is doing things I love with people that I love.
Okay. So, all right. So there's, as with anything which gets super simplified, there's always details which are missed. So how do you define things that you love, and how do you define people that you love?
Things that I love are, in doing that very thing, time bleeds away. Time just kind of melts away. And those moments where you feel extremely, it's almost euphoric, it's drug state-like, and it's one of those feelings that's so difficult to describe. And for me, it's to give a context around it. It's when I run my in-person workshops, when I run the events I get to run, when I'm on stage, when I'm creating experiences with. Let me give you a very recent example. So in January, we ran a little retreat where I got to run that retreat with one of my best friends and Craig, who's my videographer / experience manager. And when I get to create an experience for people, with people that I really love, it was unbelievably fulfilling, super fun. And that's what I struggle to find the words. because it's such an emotional experience, right? But it's fun, it's fulfilling, it's time melting, it's filled with humor, and it's impactful. So kind of 5 things that come to mind when I get to do something I really, really, really love. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so you've got these incredible experiences, and you're talking about these events which you're running, and especially when you're running it with people that you love and which you really enjoy doing
And
it
that's
with.
so key, because I used to be a keynote speaker on my own, right? I used to be the one person that would be on stage crafting an experience on my own for people. The biggest difference that I've learned about what success means for me now is to craft experiences together with others. As opposed to, as a keynote speaker, you kind of craft the experience for the audience by yourself, right? So that was a big change in my definition of success. Is that I wanted the crew. I wanted to do it together with the crew. Yeah, which was a big shift in how I define success. Whereas before, success to me was achieving that feeling of doing what I love on my own.
Right. What changed? What triggered that shift?
Accidental, because to run the workshops that I run, I couldn't run them on my own. I needed a team. And then in acquiring the team, in training the team, in finding the right people, and then putting on the event, I went, wow, this is way more fun than the keynote. I mean, the keynote's great, it's good, but wow, this is like a whole different kettle of fun. So when I dived into that and really did 20 plus of them, that's when I realized, oh, okay. So my definition of success is not just a journey on my own. I need that crew. And then I looked to Will Smith, I looked to like Kevin Hart, and how their success isn't based on just them. They've got this crew. So in the example of Kevin Hart, it's the Paper Cup Boys, right? And Will Smith had his manager, had his security guard, had his riders. And as I read more about their lives, I went, wow, that's what I really want. Not to become a comedian or an actor or anything, but just the environment in which success occurs in. That's what I want. I want that. So then I became more conscious and built out the team more.
You're reminding me of a quote. I think it was Arnold Schwarzenegger, that there's no such thing as a self-made man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And there isn't. I don't believe there is such thing as a self-made person at all. However, some people enjoy doing it on their own. Like I have met some people who have genuinely enjoyed the journey and are happy to do it, kind of being the core star, being the main person. Whereas I've done that for many years now, and I kind of want a different chapter and do something, but have a crew. I don't know. There's something about that's just so enticing, and that represents success to me.
Did you enjoy it when you were just on your own?
Yeah, I did. It was fun. But it got lonely really quickly. It's why for 80% of my career, I always flew my videographer with me. And it's not only to capture the entire journey, because I wanted to capture the journey because one day I knew that people would ask me, hey, Vin, how did you build a career in keynote speaking? So I thought, look, why don't we just document everything, have hundreds of terabytes of content, and then we'll do something with that later. So I really love the process of documentation. But really, I feel the main reason I flew my videographer with me to every single event I did was because I wanted the companionship. I didn't want to do that journey alone. Yeah, and I know a lot of speakers who travel to every gig themselves. They're on the road 200 days a year, and they're just on their own. And I don't know how the hell they do it. It's just, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. I think most of us are social beings, but I guess some people just don't need it as much, right?
Yeah, and I wonder if it's true. It's what happens in their hotel room when they're by themselves, and like, is there sadness there? Is there loneliness there? I'm sure there is, but maybe they just don't talk about it.
Yeah, that's similar to Carl Cease's journey, I guess. You familiar with Carl Cease?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Someone to check out. He was a comedian, got very high level, won a whole bunch of awards and everything. But he was on his own. He found it very lonely. He was just trying to prove himself to his mum the whole time. And then he eventually realized that's not what he wants to do. There's got to be something more. And just naturally, as a result of that, he built up a whole team around him as well. He's still kind of a comedian, but with a spiritual lens and having more fun.
Right.
Like a funnier, more fun version of Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
A lot more mellow too, I guess. So maybe share for listeners, what has been your journey? Start as far back as you want to start.
Well, as far back as I want to go. Okay. Well, I started, it's funny, a Facebook memories picture came up probably about 4 weeks ago. And it showed a picture of me in 2009 standing behind a hot bar in a food court in my mum and dad's takeaway store. And I was carving up just a roast pork meal for one of the customers. And it was just such a vivid photo because my cousin took it while she's sitting in the food court. And that just brought back so many memories because as I was working out what I wanted to do with my life, my parents supported me so much. I would only work about, I don't know, it was the equivalent of 3 days worth of work, but my parents would give me $500 for 3 days of work, which was nothing near what they were paying, the other people that were working there, because most people were making 15, 18 bucks an hour, whereas my parents paid me a lot more. And they did that to support me as I was trying to discover what I was going to do. And that's where I started in 2009, which is not that long ago when you look at it in terms of, my entire life. I was working in a takeaway store. And then on the weekends, I would work in a petrol station. And the reason I did those two things was, one, I wanted to help my family. And B, I worked in a petrol station because after hours, they paid you lots of money. And I remember doing this and hating it, but my dad telling me that it's important to sometimes do things that you really dislike because it lights a fire under your ass to make you go for the things you want. So he made me stick at those two things for 2-3 years. And I did that for 2 or 3 years, which I absolutely hated. But while I remember standing there in the petrol station, standing in the back of my parents' takeaway store, frying up hot chips and dim sims and Chico rolls, that's when I started to really dream up the life that I really wanted. And Harry, the life that I really wanted at the time was to become a professional magician. I wanted to do close-up magic. I wanted to have my own stage show. That's all that I wanted. And I sucked at it. I mean, I remember losing out to a local magician here in Adelaide. His name is Magic Mike. And
You're kidding, right?
Yeah.
Did you come up with that name before the movie, at least?
Yeah. Well, he's nothing like that Magic Mike. But I would just lose out to this magician all the time. And it was a magician in I think it was at the time in his late 30s. And I would always lose out to him, but technically I was better. From a technical standpoint, I was just so much better than this guy, but I kept losing out gigs from him just all the time. And it just sucked, and I no matter how hard I tried to build this career that I loved, I just got no traction at all whatsoever.
What do you mean you're losing out? Like you were both trying to get the same gigs and you just kept getting them?
Adelaide is small, right? And one of the most powerful questions I learned to ask some of my clients early on in my magic career was, how come, look, I know you're not going with me. How come you didn't go with me? And that's when they referred, oh, look, Vin, we found that, this other magician was a better fit and they picked the other magician. But then clients never really took the time or cared enough to tell you the truth behind why they didn't go with you, right?
Yeah.
I think it takes a very kind of special relationship for people to tell you the truth. Because ultimately, people don't want to be rude. They don't want to hurt your feelings. Mm-hmm. Finally, I met one of those clients who cared enough and told me why. And the reason was because my website and my marketing sucked. And because in the video that I did have on my website, he shared with me that while technically you were great, you had no audience management. It didn't seem like you could control the audience. And then that was the one little clue that he gave me that allowed me to then go down the rabbit hole of self-improvement. I kept blaming everybody else for not seeing why I was so brilliant. No, and then all I did was, Harry, I just technically tried to get better. Just, well, okay, if I'm still losing out to Magic Mike, then I'm just going to spend more time perfecting my sleight of hand. I just didn't get anywhere. And I just kept doing that until that one client helped me realize that, oh, right, it's not all about sleight of hand. Through my marketing, I wasn't able to communicate my brilliance. Through my lack of showmanship, I wasn't able to communicate my brilliance. Maybe it's not everybody's fault or everybody else's fault that they can't see how brilliant I am. Maybe I'm not showing them how brilliant I am. And then it was funny because once you kind of take ownership of that, and rereading one of Jocko's books recently about extreme ownership, it's such a powerful book. It just makes you realize that every time you blame others, you rob yourself of the opportunity for personal reflection and growth. Mm-hmm. And I did that for years, man. It sucked. So the one time I took responsibility, then the self-improvement journey began. And that's when I started to realize the value of marketing, communication skills, everything, audience management, all of it as a magician. And the moment I started working on that, Harry, things started to happen and progress started to come.
What was the shift that really needed to happen for you to start taking personal responsibility for those parts? Because clearly you had taken personal responsibility for becoming technically a better magician. Yeah. And you had personal responsibility to keep going for these gigs, no matter how many times you lose out to, I still find the name funny, Magic Mike. But so you had personal responsibility for at least some areas. But what was different about the personal responsibility you were taking for those parts versus the parts which you really didn't want to work on?
It was lack of awareness. I don't think I was resistant to taking responsibility. I wasn't there was no real resistance to that. It was just lack of awareness. You don't know what you don't know, right? And I feel that so many of us, including me still in life now, you don't know what you don't know. And when you don't try to become more aware of the unknowns or the unknown unknowns, then you get stuck very easily. For example, right? My car, I love Jeeps. I'm a huge Jeep fan, and I got a Jeep Gladiator. And I remember when we got bogged and we got stuck with the Jeep Gladiator, I had no idea how to get out. So to me, the classic way to get out was, oh, brilliant idea, Vin. Why don't you just rock the car out of it? Go reverse really fast, shift it into drive, and then drive forward and you'll get out. And I remember just kind of sinking deeper and deeper and deep into the sand and just had no idea how to get out. And I'm stuck. I don't know how to get out. There was no way to get out. And this other car came along and he just said, oh, look, mate, I can't tow you out. I don't have any recovery gear. However, there's a really brilliant technique. Just put it into drive, put it into first gear, and just put a slight pressure on the drive pedal and just crawl at 3 kilometers an hour, 2 kilometers an hour. And you're not going to move at all for the first 10, 15 minutes, but gradually you're going to get out. And just try the super slow crawling technique. I got out. So if I never met that guy never came along and helped us, then I would have never had the knowledge to get out. And I felt like I was bogged in my life, metaphorically. And it took someone to come along to make me aware. And that's why I think it's so important to seek out teachers, to ask questions, especially when you fail. When you fail or do things wrong, don't just take ownership. You've got to take ownership and then ask lots of questions to try to build that awareness. Because without that awareness, even if you take responsibility for things, you don't get anywhere, right? So for me, it was asking lots of questions, always looking for teachers, always trying to find mentors. I think those two things help you build more awareness around what you don't know. And I think that's so important.
So it sounds like there are two parts to that. The first part is you got to ask the right questions, right? It's Like you can type whatever you want into Google. If you search why are vaccines the end of humanity, you're going to find very different results to why are vaccines the best thing since sliced bread. Right? You're going to find you're going to find very different answers to those questions. So I'd imagine you've had to learn how to ask the right questions. And then the second part is you got to find the right people to ask, right?
Yes, and that's a lot of due diligence that I think a lot of the times people don't do. Because think about this, right? When you're young, who do you reach out to when you want a mentor? When you think about it in the most kind of basic teenage sense. When I was about 18, when I tried to find a mentor, to me it was find the person who has the nicest car, find the person who's the most wealthy, and that's a mentor. And that has led me astray many times, because one of my very early mentors was, this property person, a property investor, and like it just wasn't the person I wanted to be. At the time when I was 18, I had no money. There was no point being, connecting with a property investor. I couldn't loan any money from the bank at that point to buy a property. So I think the first thing is, you're right. Learning how to find the right mentor for you. And a Bruce Lee quote comes to mind for this. When the student is ready, the master will appear. And what that means is, when you know what you want, only then can you find the right mentor for you. And if you don't do the tough work of getting clarity on what you want, you'll forever go for the wrong mentor. And mentors don't put you on a different trajectory unless you know what you want, because you won't find the right mentor.
Yeah.
I get this a lot. I get a lot of people reaching out to me, asking me to be their mentor. And the moment I ask them the question, well, tell me, what do you want to do? And when they don't know, it means I'm not the right mentor for them, right? It's just, so I think clarity is so important. So the first question you asked was, well, okay, how do I find the right mentor? Well, you need to know what you want. You have to have absolute clarity on that. And then when you do, the master will appear. It's very easy. You can find the right person for you once you know what you want.
So why are you hesitant to mentor people who don't yet know what they want? Like, as in, I'd imagine it might be because you're worried that you're going to send them down the wrong path, or maybe you're just worried that you're just going to waste your time because they're not going to listen, they're not properly committed. Is there something else?
No, I'm not afraid to mentor people. It's more for me nowadays just a lack of time. And I'm trying to find more scalable ways to be able to help people on their journey. Because if you came to me and you said, hey, Vin, I want to build a keynote speaking career, I'm not afraid to share with you thoughts on how you can do that, because I know how to do it. I've done it, right? However, if you came to me and said, hey, Vin, I want to be an influencer online, man, I have no idea how to do that. We won't engage in this mentorship relationship. No way. So again, it's just, I have way more clarity now on who I can help and who I can't. And the people who I can't, I'm no longer afraid to say, hey, I actually can't help you. I don't know how to help you. It's okay to say that. Whereas early in my journey, I thought I had to help everyone and I thought I had to have all the answers. Whereas now I have a lot more courage to say, I have no idea, Harry. None. So I'm sorry, I can't help. So yeah, no longer afraid to own what you don't know and who you can't help, and understand who you are for and who you are not for.
Did this change around the same time that you realized that your definition of success is doing the things you love with the people you love as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's an evolution of my definition. My definition for success changes all the time. And I think that's because we grow as people and different things become important to us. I mean, that's only a recent revolution, kind of evolution. Ask me the question again, so I have clarity.
When did, maybe I'll ask it a different way.
Okay.
When did that shift for you? The wanting to be the answer to everybody, the key for every lock, to, you know what, some people I can help, some people I can't, and I'm just going to be upfront about it. When did that change?
Probably around 2017, 2018. There's a big trap that speakers in general fall for and they fall into. And the trap is, I have all the answers. and I can help everybody. And it's a common trap, because when you meet a speaker early in their journey, and I fell for this too, and you ask them, oh, hey, what, and a conference organizer goes to them, hey, what topics can you speak on? Because your deep want and desire for this career, you go, oh, I can speak on anything you want. Because you want to please everyone. You know, in your career as a speaker, when you do a speaking event and then you're at one of those events where they evaluate you, you may get 90 good comments and 5 bad. Those 5 bad comments will destroy you, right? It's the desire to please everyone. And to me, on that journey, I tried to please everyone. I wanted to please everyone. And the moment there's one person that looks unhappy in my audience, it would just destroy me. And around 2017, I just realized that you can't please them all. And worse, if you try to please them all, you end up becoming, cardboard. You please no one. You're bland. So I kind of realized, okay, it's okay to not be for everyone. It's okay to not know everything. It's fine. It's why when you go to the gym, there's not one machine you use that works every muscle. There's many machines. And that's why there's many people. It's why there's many different workouts. It's because everyone serves a different purpose. There are many people who teach communication skills. I'm one of them. I do it in a different way. So when people ask me, it's funny, my clients ask me this. I mean, one of my clients asked me this before. He said, well, Vin, I understand your unique value proposition. There's this other competitor in New York. Tell me, why should I choose you over them? Or what do you suggest I should do? Which was fascinating, because he's asking me. And I said to him, the answer I feel is both. Because which one is better, the treadmill or the bike? Each has its pros and cons, but both are ultimately great. Why wouldn't you want to learn from both? Right. So to me, it was funny. It's funny. I'm taking a very kind of strange direction to tell you this, but what I'm trying to say is, during the time when I learned that I'm not for everyone and that it's okay not to please everyone, that's when I also became more abundant in my mindset when it came to competition and work. Because I no longer felt threatened once I tried not to please everyone. Because as I learned trying not to please everyone, it made me realize that, well, if I can't please everyone, then of course there's going to be a segment of the market that I'm not for. Well, that's important, because that's why you have competitors, because your competitors can please that part of the audience. And it was a very useful journey with that lesson, because it just it helped me become more abundant in, we don't all have to compete for it. I'll serve this part of the audience. You can serve the other part. It's okay.
Well, what was the tangible result of that? As soon as you started deciding, you know what, I'm not for everyone. There's a specific niche which I'm focusing on, and I'm going to serve them, and I can serve them better than anybody else can.
Yeah.
What results did you get from that? What changed?
A lot more freedom. A lot more freedom. I felt a lot more free in the way that I taught. I didn't have to dance around the people that I wasn't for. I was able to be more of who I wanted to be in the way that I taught. It just felt a lot more free. I just felt a lot more free. I felt a lot more myself. It just felt a lot more organic, right? It didn't feel... I'll give you an example. I have clients where I can't say the word shit, or clients that I can't even say the word hell. And I don't swear lots. I'm not someone who does. But when you restrict my vocabulary and you restrict so many things about my performance, I used to say yes to those people because I wanted to please everyone. But the moment I kind of adopted this mindset of, look, I'm not for everyone, and it's okay. It's okay, Vin. Far out. And once I accepted that, then I learned to say no more. And I stopped taking on things that I didn't want to do. And it's funny, Harry, because once you do this, the people who love you, when you become a stronger beacon of who you are and you radiate that light much brighter like a lighthouse, then all of a sudden, more of the boats that are for you see you, which is really cool. It took time for that to happen. It didn't happen overnight, but it took time now, because now I've got clients who really love me, but wouldn't have seen me if I kept saying yes to the clients that restricted me. Right?
Yeah.
Because by saying no to them, I made so much more room for the clients who allow me to play. It's like last year I got to work with a client where they allowed me to just flex my creativity, and we made all these different VFX videos which had crazy scenes in them, but it was just, they allowed me to play and flex my creativity.
And so
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more, especially for the listeners. You're back in 2009. You were working in your parents' Vietnamese store in the food court.
Wasn't Vietnamese. It was it was a Australian roast meal takeaway store.
Okay, Australian roast meal takeaway store. Got it.
Yeah.
I guess Vietnamese food wasn't loved back then.
Yeah.
As much as it is now. Okay. And so you're working in your parents' store in the food court, and you were doing equivalent of 3 days a week, and you were doing all the other work which you hated at nighttime at petrol kiosks, and you eventually got to stay. All of this was to be able to do magic.
Yeah.
Firstly, why magic?
Because it represents something that's amazing. Because it's a world where I can defy the rules of reality. You know, it's the one world that exists where, when you are in that world, the reality of that world is completely negotiable. In the reality that we often find ourselves in, you know, the one we live in now, we can't make things float. You can't make things disappear. You can't make things reappear. It's not possible. Whereas in the world of magic, this reality, it's bendable, it's negotiable. You can do whatever you want with it. And I loved living in a world where that was the case. So that was just, to me, such an addictive quality of this art form. And it can seem a bit cheesy, but it was a world where anything was possible, which was so cool, right? It really spoke to my inner child. And I think that's where so many of my values are. It's why I feel I find myself living the life I live now. It's because I've always had those qualities in the world of magic bleed through to my reality. I didn't want to live the way everyone else lived. I didn't want to do what my parents did. I didn't want to do what my uncles and aunties did. I didn't want to follow and pursue the career path that my friends were pursuing. I didn't want to do that. I wanted something else. I wanted something that was more bendable, more negotiable.
Is it that you just wanted to be unique and different, or is it just you really actually loved bending the reality and seeing the surprise on people's faces?
That was the start of it. The start of it, I mean, initially what draws you into magic is that it's the most fraudulent way to get attention, right? You get attention from people extremely quickly. You can wow them. Gives you self-confidence. It makes you feel good. That's the first step in the world of magic that I think most people get into magic for. It's because, oh, wow, it makes me feel good. I make people feel great. But then at a deeper psychological level, I loved magic because, again, in that world, you can make anything you want happen, right? There are ways to make anything happen. It was incredible. It was just such a cool world because it's like Play-Doh. I can make anything I can make anything I want. Whereas I felt like in my everyday life, I had to use stencils with my Play-Doh. I wasn't allowed to just make anything I want out of it. I had to, no, stencil it, make a star. Oh, okay, make a dinosaur. Whereas in the world of magic, I could mold it into whatever I wanted. That felt really cool. And that's why I loved writing magic shows. Because I performed at the Adelaide Fringe for many years. And in writing those shows, in that 1 hour, I could create whatever world I wanted. And not only did I like creating that world for the audience, I loved living in the world that I created for that 1 hour. And I feel like that mindset, I became drunk on that mindset. And then I wanted that in my everyday life. I wanted to not only live in a world that I created for an hour, but how can I actually live in a world that I create for myself outside of the theater show?
And did you manage to do that?
I feel that I've done that pretty well. You know, I am still often shocked that I get to do what I do. I mean, I right now, and this is something that COVID's brought along, but right now the impact I get to have around the world, and I can have that impact from my garage. You know, I'm about to run a virtual masterclass in 2 weeks, and I've got people from Singapore, I've got people from Malaysia, I've got people from the US, from Canada, and you know, I've been doing this for so long now, for 2+ years, but it still boggles my mind that it's kind of what I get to do. You know,
Incredible.
it doesn't, yeah. I know that's why I love the Tim Ferriss quote so much, and it's that reality is negotiable, whether you realize it or not. You know, and what reality are you negotiating right now? You know, it's once you realize that this whole reality you live in, you can negotiate it, you can bend things, you can move things. It just makes it that much more exciting, and you feel that much more empowered.
And you're speaking right back to this whole notion of extreme self-responsibility, right? Extreme ownership.
Yeah.
Where it's no longer, it's not just, you know, it's their fault that they can't see how amazing of a magician I am.
Yeah.
It's up to you to create it, right?
And it's up to you to negotiate it, right? It is.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
why did you stop magic? Or why did you didn't stop it, but why did you move away from
Yeah,
it?
no, I did. I did. Because I found more fulfillment in education and teaching. Magic was great. It was a fantastic journey, taught me so many valuable skills. But it very quickly it wasn't as fulfilling. You know, the applause got old. And ultimately what really killed it for me was the applause that I got for the magic and this is not true for all magicians. Many magicians still love it and are truly fulfilled by it. This is just my own journey. And as I performed magic and people would give me wonderful applause, the applause for the magic started to feel more and more empty because they were clapping for something that I didn't actually do. Right? So, you know, I read your mind. No, I didn't. I use some really sneaky ways to be able to get the information that you wrote down on a piece of paper that you thought I didn't know that I did know. You know, and then it just started to feel a little bit empty for me. And I wanted something that brought more fulfillment. And then that's when I discovered the speaking industry. And that kind of, when I noticed that and started to become aware of the speaking industry, and I went, wow, this is amazing. I can do a little bit of magic and teach at the same time, make the medicine taste good for people. And it's hugely rewarding. So then that's when I kind of went down the rabbit hole of, wow, speaking is a career path. That's crazy.
Because I mean, you're still doing magic in every one of your shows, right? Like, and it's still.
Yeah,
I'm guessing it still gets that applause and that laughter from people as you're presenting.
Yes, but it's used now more intentionally, as opposed to before. Magic was all there was before. There was nothing else. Whereas now, magic takes up about 5%, 10% at most of what I do. Now it's used as a way to make the medicine taste good, right? It's just kind of like it's some spices. It's garlic in a dish as opposed to being the dish itself. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like this entertainment, right? It'd be the reason why almost every major speaker in the world is well known, has become successful. Like even if you think back to Tony Robbins' event, and he's got lights and crazy music and everyone dancing, and it's like that seems like the main part of it, and some people go there just to have fun, but you're getting so much more from it, right?
Oh yeah,
Like
entertainment
that's
value.
just making it. Yeah, and that's just making all the education that is providing, I guess, as you put it, taste good, making that medicine taste good, right?
Yeah.
So was that an easy transition from from being a magician to being a keynote speaker?
Definitely not. It was hard for many reasons. One of the main reasons I remember it was hard was because you have to break a lot of molds. For example, when I transitioned from now a magician into I want to be a keynote speaker, clients would say, "Oh, Vin, sorry, we already got after dinner entertainment." Right? So they kind of funneled you into this corner of, "Oh, you're a magician. Oh, of course. Okay, well, after dinner entertainment. Sorry, we've already got someone for that. We've got a comedian coming in." So people thought that being a magician, I think a lot of people perceive that, oh, being a magician, oh, that must be so good for you. It's what a great competitive edge. What a great unique value proposition. It wasn't like that at all. Even worse, they kind of put a fee cap on me as well. They kind of went, "Oh, the magician, you can't charge 10 grand as a magician. Look, we've got a $2,500 budget for entertainment." So there were fee barriers, there were psychological barriers, there was, barriers in terms of where they would slot me for the event. So then I had to make a very big decision. I had to completely clean up my blueprint online. I had to close down my website of me offering my magic services. I removed a whole bunch of videos on YouTube of me doing close-up magic and roving magic as a service. And that was really hard because I'd built up a really good business by that point, just doing close-up magic. I mean, I built this wonderful business where every weekend I booked multiple events where I was being paid like $1,500 to do roving magic for a couple of hours. So I had this really nice, wonderful business. But it's like that metaphor in the world of, swinging through jungles as Tarzan. You've got to let go of one branch before you can catch the next one. You can't kind of keep hanging onto this branch and then try to catch the next one. So I had to let my branch go that I got so comfortable with. And that was the scariest thing I've ever done. But that was fantastic because it worked. Right? It took a bit of time. When you let go of this vine, there is a moment when you're in the air and there are no vines that you're hanging onto. That moment for me lasted 6 months. 6 months before things started to kind of take traction. But I had to just completely kill off the other brand. I had to completely get rid of it because it was impacting the future that I wanted to create. And that was really hard.
So a lot of people listening to this are probably, maybe they're in their career, maybe they're trying to change their career, or maybe they're trying to get to a management role, or they've got to let go of something.
Yeah.
Maybe they're about to shift direction in their business, just like you did.
Yep.
In a big way. And they're looking at it and they are scared as hell. Like, they are frightened.
Well, and you should be. It is scary.
And what can they do? What can they do given that they're feeling so freaked out by it? They're about to let go of one branch or one vine and jump towards another, hoping that they make it. And they're just too scared for it. Maybe they've got kids. Maybe they've got other responsibilities or parents to look after. What are they supposed to do?
I don't know. Because I didn't have kids. I didn't have anyone else I was looking after at the time. And I think it's probably quite irresponsible for me to try to give advice on that right now. I can only share with you that the reason I took that risk and the reason I was letting go of this vine that I so dearly loved was because I kept thinking about the alternative. I kept thinking about, if I kept doing this for the next 40 years, how unhappy would I be? The way that I would serve my family is not just financial. I serve my family in so many other ways. The presence that I bring, the joy that I create, the fun that I foster, the adventures that I plan. I feel that it's so easy, and I think this is especially for the breadwinner, whether it be the husband or the wife. It's so easy to fall into the trap to think that the only way I serve this family is money. That's not the only ways in which I believe you serve the family. It's the energy in which you greet your family in the morning and the positive vibes you give them to help them start their day. We could create a list that would just go on and on and on and on. Money is only one of the ways. And if you making money through the job that you currently really are crushed by on a daily basis, if that causes you to not be able to plan fun experiences, to bring a bad mood to them every day, to always not be present, to be stressed every day of the week, then sure, you're giving them one thing, but you're not giving them the other 50. It doesn't weigh up. At some point, it's actually better for you to maybe make a little bit less, but be able to give them a much richer life in a different sense, right? So for me, I thought about it personally, and I just went, wow. Well, at the time I was with my wife already, but at the time she was my girlfriend. I just thought, the person I'm coming home to, I'm not bringing the best version of myself. Like, sure, I'm bringing a little bit of money home, but man, I'm not enthusiastic. I'm not passionate. I'm not exciting. I'm not like none of it. I was just kind of mundane and getting bland. And it wasn't fun for me. I didn't like it anymore.
So you found that the 60, 80, 100 hours a week, I don't know how many hours you're doing at the time, but you found that all the time that you were spending at work was kind of sucking out a lot of the energy, which you really wanted to bring home to your wife and eventually to your kids, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That was just, I guess, from the sound of things, you looked forward 5, 10, 20 years. That's just not who I want to be.
You made me think of something as you said that, Harry, and it's that I view work as a fuel source that fuels me to be the person I want to be for my family and everyone else in my personal life. It's like I've always looked at work as I've always wanted to be a fuel source. I don't want it to suck from me. I want it to give to me. And again, this is one of those radical thoughts that I had. Like, I want my work to excite me so that at the end of the day, I come home energized. Like, I want the opposite of what I felt when I was working at the petrol station, or, as much as I loved my parents, you trust me, that takeaway store sucked the life out of me, right? But I want my work to energize me so that I live life, right? It's kind of, I don't want it to be the other way around. I don't want to come home and then, just like I saw in my dad and I saw in my mum, every time they would come home, completely just drained, nothing left. What if you could negotiate that and your work excited you, and then once you finished, you felt great?
Yeah. Now, look, that's still radical today, let alone...
Absolutely.
I know
absolutely.
back 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's still radical, and people still don't listen to it. I have to coach clients through it. But what would you... how would you summarize that, or even share another way? Or do you have a specific story you can share about how, just as a result of the work you do and how it energizes you, it's just making you a better person for your whole experience of life?
Well, one story comes to mind, and it's about my mother and father-in-law. And when I went to Malaysia, my wife, Pei Wen is my wife, and she's from Malaysia. And when we went to Malaysia for the first time, and I met her parents, this is when I dropped out of university, trying to become a magician phase of my life. I couldn't understand why her parents didn't hate me and despise me. Because my ex-girlfriends before, their parents hated me. They just thought, oh, he's deadbeat, never going to make it, never going to get anywhere in life, wants to be a magician. Oh, God. So when I went to Malaysia, I was ready. I had all my armor up. I was psychologically prepared to just have to end a relationship with a girl that I really loved because her parents didn't approve of me. And then when I met them, they just didn't do any of that. And then I remember questioning Pei Wen. I said to her, are they saying things behind my back? Are they telling you things behind your, like, are they just not telling me? Like, what's going on? She goes, no, my parents really like you. My whole family, my uncles and aunties like you. And I remember just being so flabbergasted by this. And my father-in-law said something to me at the time that he didn't, I probably should tell him how meaningful it was. But he said to me, I like you because of how you make my daughter feel. That's why I like you. It's not because of your job, your career, your title. No, I like you for that reason. I like you because of how you make my daughter feel. I thought, wow, that is so... I never got that before. and I never realized the importance of what you do in life and how what you do, potentially as a career and a job, impacts the people around you. No one ever framed it that way for me before, because I thought, again, my job, my career path is just a means to making money to provide for the family. And that's my key role as a man. That's what my dad did. It's all that he did. My dad didn't get enjoyment from what he did. He was always tired. He was always stressed. So I thought, that's kind of the role I have to do. But my father-in-law gave me a different perspective, is that, wow, he likes me because what I do brings a better version of me home that makes his daughter happy. That's so radical. That's so cool. So that was, that was a game changer for me, because when he accepted me in that way, far out, that was such a tick of approval. Oh, wow, keep going down that path. That was so important.
Did that come to mind consciously or subconsciously when you finally decided to let go of the magician branch and jump to the keynote speaking?
That was conscious at that point, because I knew that it's not just, again, it's so hard at the time, but I knew it just wasn't about just the money. It was about feeling really fulfilled. It was about feeling really excited about your work and really wanting to enjoy it. But again, it's hard, right? Because I didn't have kids at the time. I didn't have, I wasn't married at the time. So it's so difficult, because when I'm trying to think of the listener right now, if you've got 3 kids, 2 mortgages, a partner, I don't know how you would do that, right? And at the same time, to me, if you want the family to be happy and you to be happy and your wife to love you and be happy, then you can't afford not to do it. But then how? The answer to that I don't have. That's why I encourage a lot of young people. You've got to try a lot of different things. You've got to 100% try to find something that fulfills you and brings a lot of joy first.
I guess at the very least, what you're saying to people is you can still find things that you're really going to enjoy outside of work, and try and find ways to energize yourself before you walk in the door, listen to the music you love, or meditate, or do whatever, or go to the gym first before you get home and have some transition, or just make sure that you're waking up a little bit earlier and get yourself into the right state before you're spending time with your kids and wife.
And I can share this with you, because even in my own circle of friendships, we always make ourselves seem more trapped than we actually are. I feel like that seems to be the case, is that we always like to paint the picture that we are so incredibly trapped, but we're not as trapped as we tend to think we are. It's like that, I guess, that Stoic saying where they say, life is not as good as you think, but is also not as bad as you think. Right? It's kind of, we always over dramatize it for the good or for the worst, but it's never as bad as you think, and it's never as good as you think. And that kind of helps me wriggle my way out of kind of tough situations. But
the example?
Well, I mean, okay, so I won't probably name my friend, but I've got a friend. If he listens to this, he'll know who I'm talking about. But he's a pharmacist, and he feels completely trapped and burdened by, man in his mid-30s, unfortunately, feels stuck in a job that he doesn't particularly love, has 3 mortgages, 2 investment properties on his own, and has 2 kids, and feels completely trapped, no free time, and he works 6 days a week.
Could have been you.
Yeah, it could have been me. But again, he feels very trapped and suffocated. But to me, well, what you could do is you can sell the 2 investment properties. You can sell your property as well and get a smaller place. It's just like that trapped feeling I just feel isn't really real. But yeah, it's like that trapped feeling is it real, or is it real just because you're trying to hang on to everything? So to me, I don't know if we've had this conversation, we've talked about it, but he's so attached to so many of the material things that he has, that attachment to the material things is what's causing him to be trapped. If he lets those things go, he'll free himself up.
And then we've got to wonder, why does he want those material things? Because I'm reminded of a client who reached out to me about a year ago. Also a pharmacist, mid-30s. He'll know who he is when he hears it. And he started the conversation like he came to me saying, "I need an investment property. I need your help to get an investment property. That's what I need your help with." I said, "Okay, why do you want an investment property?" He's like, "So I have another stream of income." I said, "Great. Why do you want another stream of income?" He's like, "Isn't it obvious?" I said, "Not to me." "Well, because it's that way I'm going to be able to eventually stop working sooner." "Okay, why do you want to stop working sooner?" "Well, because I don't like my job." So why don't you like my job? Why didn't you like your job? So, because my manager's crap and the team's crap and all of it's just kind of crappy and I really don't like it. I said, why don't you want to stay in a job that you hate? It's like, isn't that obvious? I said, not to me. Why is it for you? I don't know. It just drains me. I said, what's wrong with that? It's like, well, then I get home and I'm a shitty husband. I'm a cranky dad. And then I just asked him, well, would getting another investment property make you a less shitty husband and a less cranky dad? And he stopped. Like, probably not. In fact, it'd probably make it worse because I'll just have more debt and more frustration. I said, all right, so do you still want an investment property right now, or is there something else we've got to work on first? And then obviously we worked on his mindset, his energy levels, and it can change for anyone, right? He has kids and a wife and all this responsibility, and is just we reach for we keep thinking, we keep believing as a society, we're taught this, right? To find whatever we can, to take whatever we can for ourselves, to make sure that we have all the financial security possible. And eventually when we have enough money, then we can have the things we want and then we can feel happy. But ultimately our goal is just to feel happy, right? Just like what you're saying. So I love this. So let's go back to your journey, and you took that leap of faith and you went from one vine to the other, and 6 months later you landed in the speaking vine. And what happened next?
First gig I did, my client hated it.
Great start.
Yeah, it's a great start. First gig I did was for a building association in Sydney. And right after I finished the keynote, the beautiful words the CEO said to me, I was, wow. I walked off stage. I went, oh, it felt pretty good. And the CEO said to me, Vin, have you done this before? And, immediately lied to him and goes, yeah, I have done this before. Just not really understanding the true context of what he meant by what he said. And that was the first time I got paid $2,500 for a talk. And I went, whoa, I returned the money out of feeling sick in my stomach because of how disappointed he was. And it's probably the best thing I did, returning that money, because I think that caused him to email me a couple of weeks later, and he gave me truthful feedback. And that's when I didn't understand what speaking was, and I didn't understand the importance of alignment between the magic trick and the point you're talking about. Because what I did on stage was literally, here's a random magic trick to get your attention, and here's an important lesson I felt you needed to learn. Here's another random trick, and then here's another point that I felt you wanted to learn. So I treated them like basically children, going, here's candy, now eat your vegetables. Here's candy again. And it was just not understanding the importance of knowing the audience, making sure their lessons were relevant, etc. I did none of that. And that email that he sent me was an email that is so meaningful, because if he didn't send me that email, I probably wouldn't have kept going in the speaking career, because I went home that day and went, no, speaking's not for me. It's not right. It's fulfilling as I thought it was. It's not. That's how it started. And, you get your first booking. It was amazing. And then after that, all the other bookings kind of ceased to exist. So then I had to really be clear. Do I really love this, or don't I? And then I got the clarity. I really did love it. So then I had to find a way to get more gigs. So to me, I had to, again, perfect my craft, get really good at it, do a bunch for free, and just had to polish the act, polish the speech, polish your craft. So yeah, dude, it took me probably a good 2+ years before I was able to build somewhat of a stable career in the world of speaking.
I guess there are more magic mics in the world of speaking than there are in Adelaide magic shows, right?
Oh yeah, and yeah. So definitely there were a lot, and literally, I this is so hilarious how the number of mics in my life. But there's another Mike that I really looked up to when I started speaking. His name was Mike Walsh, and he's an incredible futurist, and I really looked up to him because he was just this brilliant speaker. And we crossed paths. I remember speaking at an event in Bali, and he was one of the other speakers, and he was nice enough to have lunch with me. And I was like, wow, look at this global career you've built. You know, he was speaking in London, then he was speaking in somewhere in Turkey, and then he was in the US. And I went, wow, I want this so bad. And he was just such an inspiration to me. And it's so cool now because now we're managed by the same manager, and we do gigs together all around the world, you know, virtually as it is right now. But I've got a potential event I'm doing with him in Berlin in June, you know, and it's again, to think back again, it's like, man, that's so crazy. I used to look up to him, and now I get to play with him, you know, this is amazing. So it's just, reality is negotiable.
Was he a mentor who ended up becoming a peer?
No, not really a mentor, just more of a person that would, someone to model, someone to look up to, someone to inspire you, to give you that energy to go, oh, it's possible. Wow, he's doing it. Means I can too, right? So, and I think those figures are so important. They don't actually have to be your mentor. They don't have to show you the way and everything. But it's just good seeing that person because look, one of the barriers I had in my mind was there are not many Asian speakers, right? Even when I went to the US, it's just, I never see an Asian speaker on stage, if ever. So I had a mental barrier in my head that, this is just, you know, there's a bamboo ceiling, you know, maybe the industry doesn't want Asian speakers, or maybe it's not the norm or whatever. I had those constraints in my head. So when I saw Mike Walsh, I went, you know, not the most Asian name, but yeah, he's Asian though. Half Asian, but still Asian. But that broke a negative belief that I had, which was very helpful, and I needed that.
So there are three people who know you, and who I asked their thoughts on what questions should I ask, or would you love me to ask Vin? Okay. And they're both Asian, and they absolutely admire you. They're like, well, Vin is a small Asian man, is not big, and he's in Australia. And at first he was in South Australia, of all places, which is even less Asian than anywhere else in Australia. And he somehow was able to own this space, have enough presence, and have enough of a brand where it just feels so hard for people, especially of Asian background, to be able to do that in Australia. Which, I mean, there's a lot of perception that the reality in Australia is that it's a really racist environment. And if you're not a white male, or maybe now white female, it's going to be really hard for you. Mm-hmm. How did you overcome that? Because you're more successful than Magic Mike, who I guess wasn't Asian.
He wasn't. Well, look, let's go back to that analogy I spoke about, how I got out of the sand stuck in the Jeep, right? Usually people would get out by someone putting some recovery gear and pulling them out. Or they would use these things called max tracks, which are these kind of boards that you put under your wheel and you get yourself out. When you don't have those luxuries, there's still a way to get out. And it's just by going really slow consistently for a really long time, right? And I was just flabbergasted that I was able to get out of the sand just by going really slowly because I didn't move. It just didn't feel like I was moving until I was moving. I didn't move it just because the traction is so slow. So to me, what I'm trying to say here is just consistency, the consistency of refinement. I spoke at 20 plus high schools, I remember, in 1 year for free. And I had to be so persistent because schools wouldn't want any random coming in to speak to the school. So I had to come up with ideas and strategies like emailing the school and, you know, under a fake email address and going, hey, I'm thinking of planning to send my children here. Can you send me the local school newsletter? And then they would send it to me. And then I'd read the school newsletter to go, okay, well, which one is the teacher that cares most about student development? That's the most vocal and writes in the newsletter. Cool. Okay. Now as Vin, I'm going to send that teacher an email and say, hey, look, I'm doing some fun things around South Australia for schools. Would you like me to come in? Now I got in touch with the teacher that cared the most about the students, who then rallied the most to get me into the school. And I did it for free. So then I kept doing stuff like that, even though I didn't get paid a dime. But to me, there's more progress. You can't just measure progress with money. And I think it's very easy for me to do that when I was a young entrepreneur. But I learned to value things that was progress, that wasn't money. And that was me just slowly inching my way through the sand gradually and gradually and gradually and gradually. And if you do that consistently for long enough, you'll get out of whatever situation that you're in. You'll get unstuck. And then when you get unstuck and you continue that consistency, you'll slowly start to build momentum. And that momentum builds and builds and builds and builds. And if you keep refining your craft, if you keep getting better at what you do, there is a point where you do become unstoppable, where the momentum is so strong that now you've got the 5 years of momentum behind you. Now you become unstoppable. But that unstoppable comes from all those little bits of progress that you don't stop. And I just find that people get discouraged by the invisible progress. You know, people want the acknowledgement of, oh, I got that, you know, I talk in the gig world, the magic world, or the speaking world. I want that $20,000 gig. But if I don't get that $20,000 gig, then there's no progress. This happened yesterday. There was a young lady that connected with me in 2019. And at the time, she was a student. And she reached out to me. And I remember I just did a quick voice message for her. And just said, hey, great to connect, and yada, yada, yada. She had a quick question. I answered it in a minute. And then in 2020, she had another question. She asked me again. And I was like, oh, cool. And I just answered it just quickly, you know. And yesterday, she sent me a request to do a private masterclass online for her team, because she is now one of the managers in Microsoft for their department, and they're in the Middle East, right? So to me, that was little bits of momentum that I've put out all across the years, and now it's led to this, right? So it's that was all invisible progress, but I've learned to see the invisible progress. You know, it's hard to see the invisible progress, but you have to recognize forms of progress that are outside of the tangible realm.
How do you learn to recognize that? Because otherwise, I'd imagine it would have gotten so demotivating.
Yeah,
to
dude, it did.
continue to try and move forward, and you just can't get anywhere, or it doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere.
You've just got to, it's like getting out of the sand. I had to believe that it was going to get me out. Otherwise, I wouldn't have kept going, right? I just wouldn't have kept doing that. If that guy didn't tell me that you'd be able to get out just by going really slow, then I probably wouldn't have ever tried that, because that's stupid. But because I believed it, your beliefs dictate your actions, right? So you've got to analyze, are the people you spend time with, the people you do spend time with, do they believe in progress outside of the monetary realm? I mean, do they believe in putting out a lot of good? I mean, I do that. I spend 2 weeks, it's not 2 weeks, sorry, I spend 2 hours every week getting back to messages. I don't spend every day doing it, but I spend 2 hours every week giving my time. And that's to answer all the emails. That's to answer all the, the messages that come through on the different platforms. And it's to intentionally, that before I would have went waste of time. There's no ROI on it. I shouldn't do it. But now I've learned that that's progress still. That's me still putting things out there. That's still important. Right? It's understanding that it's going to be painful, but it does come. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But when you can't see it, you have to believe in it long enough to be able to see it. And then once you see the first one come through, you can't unsee it.
So what are your thoughts on how to believe it for long enough? If it feels impossible to believe, and you just feel like, especially like this, I'd imagine is a question that you get asked reasonably often, but it was 2 people who asked me to ask you the question.
Yeah.
It's like, especially this bamboo ceiling limitation, which would apply for anyone who's listening, even if it's a a glass ceiling for women or whatever, for any minority, any group which feels like they're underrepresented and it just feels demotivating and too hard. What do you share with them?
What I'll share is that, again, the alternative is you accept that the ceiling is there. Like that's the other path. And I refuse to accept that it's there. I just do. I choose not to. It's almost, and it seems almost kind of stupid in ways, but I just refuse to acknowledge its existence. And I believe that my hard work, my smart work, my ability to problem solve and consistency will break through it. And it did, Harry. I mean, look, the reality is not only does the bamboo ceiling exist here in Australia for many people in the Asian culture, and again, many ethnic cultures have their own versions of their ceilings, but it exists in the US too. And I've done it in both markets, and it's harder in the US.
Right.
But the one thing that got me through it was, again, back to what we said before, I'm not trying to please everyone. I'm not trying to be for everyone. That allowed me to become more and more and more unique. When I made that kind of call in my head that I'm not for everyone, then I created something even more brilliant, I believe. And then when I, in a way, psychologically stopped blaming the ceiling and stopped saying that, oh, it's because of this or that or this or that, then I started to take more responsibility. And it goes back to that Steve Martin quote where I believe it is to be true. And is that be so good they can't ignore you. It's like I had that mindset in my head was I'm going to be so good that you don't care that I'm Asian. Like none of it matters. And I think some of these things do matter if you're not great. It's like if I was average and there was, a white male, me, but if I was average, I may lose to that person. If I was the same as them, I may lose to that person. But if I'm 5 times better than that person, you'll go with me. Like to me,
Yeah.
there's no question, right? Of course, there are barriers. Of course, there are challenges for different types of people and in different cultures. But if you take that ownership and you push yourself to be better, you still can win. But it's
like
hard.
you're saying that
Yeah.
It's like you're saying you can play golf, you've got a handicap, and fine, you got a handicap. Does that mean that it's just too hard to play? Don't bother with it. Like,
I'll add to that metaphor as well. We'll make sure you want to play golf though.
yes,
Make sure that's what you want to play though, because it's hard. It's really hard. So
yeah,
before you go all in and you fight for it like crazy, make sure you've got that clarity that we spoke about too. Make sure this is actually what you want.
you need the clarity that's what you want, and from what you shared before as well, you need the clarity of how you actually do it. So it's not enough just to be a technical magician or a technical accountant or
Yeah.
a super technical pharmacist. You got to be able to work on the sales and the engagement and the communication at the same time, right?
And just make sure you've got a good environment too. Make sure you've got people who are cheering you on. I think that is such a powerful element that I have in my life is my family, my friends, my cousins. I have incredibly supportive people, and I think that's something that's very important too. Is find a good environment of people who make you better and make you want to pursue the things you love. I think it's very easy to be in an environment where people also are stopping you too. Oh, don't do that. That's too risky. It's yeah. So
How do you
environment.
find that environment?
You've got to be highly selective. Yeah, I have lots of people in my network, but there's only very few people I spend time with. And I spend time with them very specifically because they make me better. You know, and I think you have to, and I know I've heard this from people too. They go, "Oh, Vin, that sounds so selfish," but it's the people who are better for me, I'm better for them. And I know I have people that want to spend time with me right now in my life, but the reason I don't spend time with them is because they're not good for me and I'm not good for them. You know, and it's you've got to be highly selective. I am. And I've just learned to be okay.
Have you always been that selective? Because it kind of sounds like from what you've shared, it was kind of luck in the beginning, right?
Yeah, no, I wasn't selective. I hung out with lots of people that always pulled me back, that always held me back out of love. And it was out of love. It was crazy. It was done out of love. It was done out of, I don't want to see you fail. I don't want to see you. But then again, it's like, I need to fail to move forward. If you stop me from failing, it's like the thing I think about with my son, Xander, is that I let him climb the monkey bars. I let him go onto the top of it. You know, I let him do all of those things. And I think sometimes other parents might look at me and go, oh my goodness, why is he letting his son do all of these things? Well, to me, it's that he has to learn how to fall. I'm not always going to be there to catch him. He has to learn that this is dangerous. He has to learn some of it. I mean, you know, I'm not going to let him play with a knife and play stabby, but it's just like, I'm going to let him try these things. I'm going to, you know, I'm not going to try to protect him from everything because I want him to grow to be strong, not to be safe. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's that's the same thing I want with my friends. I want my friends that push me to do things out of my comfort zone as opposed to always try to protect me and make me safe. Right. I don't want that. I want to be strong. I don't want to be safe. Right. I want Xander to grow up strong. I don't want him to grow up safe. Right. Yeah.
You're reminding me of this happened just a couple of weeks ago. I was at a beautiful park. There are lots of ducks and birds and cockatoos and whatever. And it's a really beautiful area. And I was there with my wife and daughter was running around chasing after birds or trying to get close to them or try and look at them. And she was really curious. And there was this other mother who was like probably about 10, 15 meters away with her daughter. And I kid you not, in about 30-second period, she said the words, be careful, about 15 times. Mm-hmm. I'm not even exaggerating. It's the kid starts going close to the birds. Be careful. Oh, be careful. Oh, be careful. The kid falls down. Be careful. Be careful. Yeah. And I can't help but wonder, in that child's psyche, in that child's subconscious memory from like when they're an adult and they just remember back to everything in their childhood, are those the words that are going to be guiding every decision they make? Be careful. Oh, be careful. Do you see the same thing?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I see it myself. I do that as a father, right? It's, and when you reflect on it, you go, oh, you know, should I be doing this? Like parenthood, oh man, it's hard. I'm by no means great at it, but it's just learning how to be better. And I think one of the things we have to be conscious of is, like you said, what are we filling their mind with?
I think you're being humble when you say you're by no means great at it.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's my biggest thing in parenting is I just want. I'm not here to protect you from failure. It's such a big topic. Even when I think about it, it's overwhelming, right? Overwhelming when it comes to parenting. But simply put, it's my job as a dad right now is to try to help my son uncover his gift. Like, what is it? My job is to be really curious. Whereas I thought the job of a father was just to be a provider and a protector. Whereas I'm leaning into a different role of curiosity. of, look, I will protect you when you really, really, really need it. I will provide for you, but I'm more curious about you. And who are you? What what is your gift? Like, what is it? You have one. Let's get really curious about it and help you uncover it, and then help nurture that, help you shape it, help you make it bright, and whatever it is that you need help with. It's trying to help him identify that.
How do you do that? Because it's still only little, right?
Yeah,
It's
it
still
was
what, 4
4.
or 5 years old.
Yeah. Well, the way we do it is expose him to a range of new experiences. And it's like cockling, right? Making sure he tries. We talked about this before the podcast, so I got to give people context. But in Goolwa in South Australia, a beautiful beach, you can get these little, I think they're a type of shellfish. And I realized the most important thing I can do is to create as many first experiences I can with my family as possible. Because in creating first experiences, it's going to give me clues as to what my child likes, what they don't like, what they're drawn to, what they're not drawn to. So we try to create as many different first experiences as possible. And through doing this, to me, it's so clear that my son loves the outdoors. There's a deep love for it. It's so clear. And then it's like, oh, okay, so outdoors. Okay, so what kind of outdoors things can we do? So we tried to find first experiences where we, obviously I do love camping myself. So we tried it with my son and he loves it too. So it's just continually exploring, okay, well, what types of camping can we do? What types of different places can we go camping? How many different types of outdoor activities are there? What types of outdoor activities can we find? So to me, it's just about, let's get really curious and do as many different first experiences as possible, and then try to hone in on some of the things that you really like.
And so this is a challenge which I face, at least in conceptual realm of parenting, is there's this one part of, yes, let's find out what they really like and let's encourage them to do it, and let's encourage them to explore other things and find out what they like and keep doing it. Awesome.
Yeah.
And the other part is, if they don't also do a lot of the things which they really don't like, then they're going to be stunted in their growth.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't have to work at your parents' shop and work at petrol kiosk and do that stuff which you really hated, then I think you said before, like you wouldn't have had the work ethic to push through and gain or get to the level which you're at today with doing what you love. So how are you balancing that?
Well, my wife is very strict. So while I'm like, hey, let's explore stuff, my wife's very strict. So he's got a lot of things that he does at home that he has to. So it's good because I guess my wife being born in Malaysia, she is a bit of that tiger mom. She is pretty strict. So that he does a lot of things that he doesn't want to do. And I don't think he gets that balance because he has us as parents. Whereas that's and my wife likes being the one that brings the rules, right? And I think I need that as well. That's why I love her, right? It's that she does bring those rules, but she also gives me the freedom to explore with Xander. Right? I'm the parent. Well, if he loves to play with slime, let him play with slime. Let's play. Let's make a big mess. Who cares? We'll clean it up after. Right? But she's the one that ensures that he cleans it up after. Right? So I think it's a healthy balance because I do have my wife and she's great at that.
So how else is your role as a husband and a father, and perhaps the contributing roles of your wife and your son into your life, impacted and influenced your career and your other decisions and your overall brand and just your enjoyment of life? How's family life impacted all the other areas?
Wow. Okay. How has family life impacted all the other areas of my life? Well,
yeah.
Family life's made me realize that something my wife said to me when I was in the US. When I lived in Southern California, I lived there 2017, 18, 19, 20. And when I was living over there, I was on the road and I wasn't a good father. I wasn't a good family man for many of those years. I only got better towards the end of those years. But I remember her saying to me that, because I was away doing like 90 events a year, 200 days on the road. And I gotta say, my wife is very tolerant. And I remember one time she said to me, you know, you work so hard to provide for us this beautiful home, this beautiful garden, metaphorically, but you're not in it. And that was a lesson that taught me to reflect on, well, why am I working? Like, why am I working? What for? You know, it's kind of like you did with your client. Why, right? It's why are you doing it? And first of all, to me, was to create abundance. And then second of all was, for the family. You know, quick knee-jerk reactions. And also they don't have to worry about money. But I didn't do enough clarity. I didn't do enough digging into myself as to why I was working so hard. And my family made me realize that, well, the reason I was working was to actually build this beautiful environment to actually live in with my family. And I got so drunk in the making of the money and investments and just more and more and more and more and more and more that I'd forgotten that I wanted to actually be in this home and this garden that I've built. So I'd lost track of that. So I think my big words now that I kind of have in front of me in my office is I want to be more intentional. I want to be more deliberate, and I want to be more strategic about what I do. So when I take on a job, for example, I've got a client in June that is an event in Berlin where I'm running a couple of days for them. Well, I want to take my wife. I want to take my son. It's a condition. I got to take them. So it's got to be more intentional, more deliberate, more strategic, more aligned. So things have to serve the greater purpose. It can't just be doing things blindly. So families just made me think more intentionally about what I do. It's not, I'll take that gig, but it's 5 weeks away from my family. It's more, well, how can I be more intentional about it? How can I live while I work as opposed to just work? So I think that's a big lesson for me, is how to live on the way, not just suffer and sacrifice and then live. It's how do you live on the way?
Do you have a process to make that happen, or is it just a continuous question that you keep asking yourself?
It's a discussion with my wife each time I take on board a big project. Because to me, it's, well, how can I do both? Like I always, again, go back to that negotiation, right? I believe you can have both. It's just how? How can I do both? Is there a way? How can we do it? How can we make it happen? So
it reminds me of something that this business owner, entrepreneur in Australia shared with me. She said, so many people always say yes, but all the time. They're saying yes, but I have this, or yes, but I can't afford it. And they'll say yes, if. So if someone wants to come in and say, I want to buy 50% of your engineering company and I want you to sell it to me for nothing. I want you to give it to me for free.
Okay.
She won't say no, and she won't say yes, but I don't know. She'll say yes if you can work your ass off for 3 years and effectively pay off the current value of the place and bring in X amount of revenue. Sure, you can have 50% of it. Great. And that's always yes if. It sounds remarkably similar to what you just shared. Everything is, I can take that gig if it also works with my family.
I love it. It's such a similar philosophy to the improv philosophy of yes and. Right?
Yeah.
It's we can do that and we can do this too. You know, so yes, you can do the gig and let's bring the family. You know, and it's funny because I used to think that I could never ask that, but I can. You can ask that. Like, again, reality is negotiable. It's crazy. Because I remember by saying something like this recently with one of my clients, just going, oh, look, I can't do that. I've got family commitments. And then the client then says, well, could you bring the family? And it's like, that's when I started realizing, again, all these things are negotiable. It's all negotiable. But again, just back to what you said, the biggest lesson was I'm building a life now with my family, not building a life for my family.
Yes.
And that's probably the biggest takeaway that I had is hey, let's build a life together. You know, whereas before I was making all of these decisions and I never took into consideration what my wife was thinking, what my son was thinking. Whereas now I feel way more like we're building a life together, with my family, not for my family. Whereas you asked me even 3 years ago, everything I did was for my family. And I was very self-sacrificial. I was like a martyr. I was proud of it. I wore it like a badge of honor. I'll sacrifice this for you. I don't want to sacrifice anything for family. I don't want to use that language. I don't want that language to be the language my son hears, because that was the big language my parents used with me a lot. Is, I sacrifice this for you. We sacrifice that for you. I don't want my son to feel like I've sacrificed my life for him. No, I want him to. I'm happily doing it because I'm going to win along the way too. I'm not, I want to be conscious of not giving my own happiness up. Like so quickly, like that being the first thing we do is like the first thing we do is we've got to give up dad's happiness. It's like, oh, well, do we really have to? Can we do both? Yeah.
And it's as if you learned that from your own childhood, right?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I see it a lot in my community. The common one Asian parents will say is, I've sacrificed my health, my back, my youth, for you. And then it becomes such a heavy weight, right? Whereas I don't want that weight. I don't want my son to have that weight, I think.
How did you let go of that weight yourself?
I don't think I have. I think I'm still hanging on to that. I think that kind of impact is still playing out.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I'd imagine that some people who are listening to this are thinking, yeah, great. It's all fine and well that you can now say that you're doing life with your family and you're working with your family rather than working for them. But those 3 or 4 years of you working your ass off and sacrificing yourself would have improved your career and just would have created even more momentum.
Definitely.
And if you had the perspective you have now, then you probably would have grown your brand and grown your career slower than you otherwise would have.
That's true.
And what's your response to that? Or maybe I'll ask it another way. If you go back to 3 or 4 years ago and you were to speak to yourself when you saw yourself sacrificing everything for your family, would you have tried to change your mind?
I don't think so. Okay. Because just like you said, I think I now realize that there are chapters in life. Your life is like a book and there are chapters. And there are chapters when you do have to be a Formula One race car and pedal to the metal. There are chapters where that is necessary. I probably wouldn't have changed what I did. I probably would have changed how I did it. I would have communicated it to my wife with more clarity that this is just a chapter of our lives. And there is a point where this chapter will move into the next. And I probably wouldn't have kept that chapter as long as I did. I didn't need to do that for 4 years. I probably only needed to do it realistically for 2.
Did you know at the time
No.
that it was just a chapter?
No. I thought this was forever. And now I also realize that this chapter of doing things with and, things are way cruisier now for me. But it's also recognizing that this is a chapter too and being conscious that there'll be another chapter. And just kind of psychologically being open to that next chapter when it does come along. And when you do feel those emotions and you do feel that kind of uneasy feeling like something is changing, then it's okay. Be open to that. Listen to that and see what's the next chapter. Whereas before, I had a very static view of life. I thought, oh, this is life forever now. This is what it is. Whereas now my view of it is, no, there's so many chapters in life. And if you're lucky enough, you live a wonderful life filled with many different chapters. So for me now, it's kind of going, looking back, probably would have done the same thing. Shorter chapter, communicated it more, being more transparent. Don't let the wall of resentment build up between my wife and I while I was doing it. And again, you don't have to be so self-sacrificial. Again, it's just there's that element of kind of self-care that I'm way more aware of now. It's like guilty pleasure of mine. I love playing games. I'm a gamer. I love it, right? And I used to sacrifice that and never play because I thought, well, that's the role of being a dad. I've got to sacrifice everything that I love for the better of, for my wife and for my son. But then I realized, well, you don't really have to completely sacrifice it. I can schedule it in and play, and then my wife is okay with it, and she doesn't hate me at the end of me playing for an hour and a half, 2 hours, right? So now I get to play once a week, twice a week, which is lovely. I schedule it in, I do it, I don't feel bad, she doesn't feel bad about it, and it's all good. And at the end of it, I'm super nourished. Like yesterday, I was able to play a session, and right at the end of it, I felt so good. Right after I finished, my son and I jumped on the electric scooter and we scooted around the neighborhood, had a great time. Mm-hmm. That was because I nourished myself, and I didn't kind of starve myself of that. So it's kind of, yeah, it's interesting. Do
you schedule everything?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I leave room for spontaneity, but if I showed you my diary, it's pretty scary. Like people look at it and I think they get freaked out by it because they don't understand the power behind it.
Tell me about that power.
Well, because I've got one for work and then I've got one for life. And at the beginning of every month, my wife and I will sit down between 4 to 5 hours and we schedule the next 4 weeks with a slight peek into the 4 weeks after that. So the first thing I do when we do this is I first individually, I map out my work. And then after that, there are a lot of gaps and my work is very flexible. So then I sit down with my wife after that. And this is us intentionally doing life together as opposed to separately. And we go, okay, how do we live this next month? And then she puts in her sessions where she goes to bar. Then I, put in the times where I'm going to spend time with Xander without her. So she's got her own personal time. Then she puts in her time where she's going to spend time with Xander. Then I've got my personal time. That's when I'm gaming, currently into Age of Empires 4. Fantastic. Love it. And then after that, we do the family time together, what we're going to do. We don't leave it blank. We go, okay, we blocked out 5 hours. Let's actually plan what we're going to do. Let's be intentional about life. Let's be deliberate. Let's be strategic about it. Let's not leave it. Yeah. So then we plan, okay, let's do some research. Where do we want to go? Plug it in, book it in. Then we book in date nights, when we're going to spend time together intentionally. So we've got a list of things we go through. And then we also go, hey, what are some goals we want to achieve as a family in the next 4 weeks? Are there anything? Oh, okay, you want to redo the retaining wall? Okay, let's put that in. What are other goals you want to do? Oh, you want to talk to a person to design the kitchen, remodel it? Let's start that. We map it all in. And then there are still free blocks. And those free blocks, we allow ourselves to be spontaneous. But we only allow 20% of the time to be spontaneous. 80% of the time, it's intentional, it's blocked in, it's scheduled. Whereas before, we didn't do this. I had my work life, and then guess what my wife was doing? She was sitting there waiting for me to spend time with her and Xander. But now she's no longer waiting. Now she's living, I'm living, and then we live together. We've done this for the last 3 years, and it's completely changed our lives.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I'd even imagine that free time you have, that 20% free time, you probably already got that scheduled in as spontaneous time or free time.
Yeah, and we've got that kind of even though it's spontaneous, we kind of go, oh, we got that free thing Friday night. We'll do a pizza night. So then we kind of communicate that just verbally. We go, oh, let's do a pizza night. So like tonight, we're doing a pizza night. So that's kind of cool, right? Cousins going to get out the dough, a couple of friends going to get some toppings tonight, all come after a long work day. Everyone's going to have wonderful pizzas. We're going to have awesome pizza night. So that's how we ensure that the thing that used to always happen is, so what do you want to do tonight? I don't know. What do you want to do? We have successfully avoided that situation for the last 2+ years. And it became even more important during COVID because it kept happening at the start of it. What do you want to watch? What do you want to watch? I don't know. So now we make those decisions during that planning time. Is that a movie night? Cool. Let's research what movie we're going to watch. Let's just schedule it. We're just going to watch this movie. Let's plan time to think, and then we just do. And think and then live. Think and then live, as opposed to, Otherwise, there was so much idle time. As opposed to
doing neither, right?
Hey?
And then otherwise, you just do neither, don't you?
Well, the classic one is, what do you want to watch? I don't know. And then we just don't do anything. Or where do you want to go eat? And then, I don't know, you don't know. And then we just don't do anything. Now we just book it in at the start of the month and we do it. So,
Incredible.
well,
I love that.
really, is it that incredible, or is it just, damn
I,
it? It
I,
seems so
I
straightforward and basic.
yeah, but it's incredible, right? Because
Yeah.
I think that's the common theme which I'm hearing from almost everything which you're sharing
Yeah.
is that you're doing the things which a lot of people know that they should, but they just don't feel they can, or they don't feel that it's worthy or
Yep.
that it's worthwhile doing.
Yeah.
And if to anyone listening, like, man, to just to realize what you should be doing and then take action on it, which I believe is what's led to your success. Like there's a big part of what do I actually love doing? What's actually going to work well? What's better than the alternative of me continuing to do this? And then there's this other component of how can I make sure that that works properly? How can I take into consideration everyone I've got to take care of and spend the time with the people I want to spend time with and do the things I love with the people I love forever? I think you said do everything intentionally, deliberately, and strategically.
Yeah. Those are big words
And
for me right now.
it sounds like they've been big words for you almost forever.
They probably
Like
were, but I didn't have clarity on them. I use themes. Themes are very useful for me in my life, and they're themes for my chapters of my life. So right now, the themes for the chapter is strategic, deliberate, and intentional. Whereas in my business phase that I was going through kind of last year when I was really building that up, that was a different 3 words, a different chapter. It was fewer, bigger, and better. I wanted fewer clients, bigger clients, and better clients. And that really helped me shape the direction that I was moving in. Do my decisions, it helps me shape my decisions, right? So I find having themes in the different areas of my life really, really helpful.
How do you choose those themes?
Uh, I sit and when I think about, for example, as a father, I want to create more adventure, curiosity, and fun right now. That's kind of the theme right now. I'm sure those themes will change as Xander matures and requires me to share with him different experiences and life lessons. But right now, those are the key themes. So I shape the themes around people. So clients, fewer, bigger, better, right? Kind of family, meaning myself and my wife, really. I really want to be more deliberate, more strategic, and more intentional as opposed to being passive. So I kind of base it around people, and it helps me come up with different themes for different areas of my life. And then it just almost becomes my checkpoint. If I've got, like I had a really big video project come up in late last year that was going to be, because I've got a production team that I kind of run. And I went, is that fewer, bigger, better? No, it's not. I'm not doing it. So we turned it away. But I was able to do that because I had that clarity of, well, that's my kind of business themes right now. I want to work with fewer clients, but deeper, bigger projects, Yeah. So it just helps you make this. It's like mental models. It creates those at a high level, just kind of basic mental models for you to navigate through life with. I find themes help.
Yeah, wow. And how much do your mentors or close friends or peers contribute to that?
Oh, a ton. In December, I went away for a whole week with a group of my close friends, and we do what we call life design, right? And we intentionally designing the life we want to live. And that's when we come up with different themes for different areas. We come up with greater clarity with what we want to do. It's where I redefined what success meant for me. It's where I became clearer on what the key milestones that I want to reach are for my business, for my personal life, for my family life. It's the symbolism of me taking 5 hours at the beginning of each month to plan the next month. That's scattered all through my life. Twice a year, I take a week off to plan the next half a year, right? And I find that without intent, like the word intentional means a lot to me. It's why I journal. It's again to be more intentional. I'm not always intentional, but at least it makes me intentional the majority of the time, 70% of the time. And that's a win for me if I can get that. So it's take the time to get clear on who you are, what you feel, what those feelings mean, how you can take those feelings, communicate it to those around you so they can get to know you more, listen to their feelings so you can get to know them more, and then you build a life together. Whereas for a long time, I was doing things in a silo and I didn't take time to plan and I was reactive. And it just makes you a better leader, right? it just makes you a better leader for your family, for your business. It makes you better when you take time out for yourself. I never knew that this was possible, Harry, because when I looked at my mum and dad's relationship growing up, and the ones we tend to reference is my mum never went away on her own. My dad never went on away his own, because if they were seen to do that, that's disrespectful. How could you be so selfish? Whereas, again, reality is negotiable, right? I kind of looked at it and said, well, none of my friends do this. But is it because are these rules, or are these rules we make up in our own heads? So I sat down, spoke to my wife, really got clear on it. And I've been doing this since 2017, 16. Every year I go away for a couple of weeks. And I can have that time by myself. And like my wife now is at a point where when we went for this last retreat, she made Rogan Josh curry that was beautifully stewed. She bought a whole esky, filled it with drinks, got it all ready for me and my friends. And it was done out of love, out of excitement that every time you come back from this, you are better. Right? And I never thought that this was possible. Whereas the moment I mentioned this to my friends, the first thing they say to me is, oh, dude, my wife's not going to let me go. No way. No way, dude. But then I'm like, well, but that's, yeah, again, is that real? Or is that because you haven't created the right environment and communicated in the right way that, yeah, like again, are you negotiating or are you just accepting again? I don't know. So
it sounds like there's a lot of reciprocity in your approach and in what you're doing. It sounds like it's not just what can I negotiate to get for me?
Yeah.
But you're doing it in partnership.
I know 100% that if my wife wasn't getting anything out of it, I wouldn't have got that Rogan Josh and esky full of lovely beverages. 100%. If she was getting nothing out of it, she's not the kind of woman that would do that. Yeah. So it's...
Well, she's getting nothing. I mean, what's she getting out of it?
Well, first of all, I think she gets a better version of me. Second of all, every time I come back from these things, it's... And again, it sounds, I think on the surface, it sounds very selfish. But I come back a better man. I really do. I'm clearer. I'm more still. I have more clarity. And in turn, it's interesting. I've never really dissected this because I feel a huge part of what she gets as well is a husband who is more thoughtful, is more aware, self-aware, more present. But then on the flip side, the more tangible things I think that she's able to get is that she gets her time away alone with her friends and what she wants as well. Kind of a direct, last year she did that with her friends, a staycation, and had a great time. But at a high level, I think what's powerful here is that we recognize and acknowledge that we are still two individuals that have different needs and requirements, and it's okay. Right? It's not the forced nature of having to become one unit forever, no individuality anymore. I think the beauty in it is in recognizing and respecting each other's individuality at the same time as recognizing that we are also one, but we are also many. We are also separate.
We are one.
Yeah, it's just about to go into sing a song, but it's and it's recognizing that marriage is one of the most interesting relationships ever because it's the longest, potentially the longest relationship that you are going to have with any human being. Mm. And that relationship in itself also goes through different chapters and you've got to be aware of it. Otherwise, what we did for a period of our relationship, it's kind of like, oh, why don't we go on the same date nights we used to go on when we first got married? I'm not feeling that fluster of excitement anymore. But to me, that was a chapter, that was a phase. A marriage goes through so many different phases. Are we trying to get back to phase one and stay in chapter one forever? Because I don't think that's right. I think there are chapters in this and we evolve. Do we want to be Charmander forever and stay that Pokemon, or do we want to evolve to Charizard because Charizard is way stronger, right? And so to me, as we evolve through our marriage and our relationship in the marriage, things change and we need to move with it. Let's not try to just do fancy dinners at a fancy restaurant. What if we evolved and we went and did a 2-day off-roading course in the Barossa Valley and tried new experiences together to grow this relationship through some challenges of new experiences that we've never experienced before, right? As opposed to try to go back to that kind of, my wife loves to watch Korean series and, it's I'm navigating my way through this. I'm by no means sharing any advice, just sharing my experience, but it's kind of us allowing it to evolve and be something different as it grows.
Look, this is amazing. I'm gonna take a moment because there's an awesome story which I think that listeners would love to hear from you. But before we go there, I'm just going to take a moment just to try and recap some of the gold which you've shared. Right?
Okay.
I asked you how you define success, and you were really quick on saying that right now, the way you define it currently, is that you're doing the things that you love with the people that you love. Right? And the way that you know that you love it is that time's just slipping away. It's euphoric. It's drug-like. And it was in 2009. You're working for your parents and you're working at night petrol stations. You didn't like it, but you got to take ownership for yourself. You got to take ownership for what you're responsible to do and making sure that you're looking after yourself. But then you've also got to take ownership for your successes and failures. And so if the audience didn't like the fact that didn't like your magic, even though that you were technically better than Magic Mike, and then why weren't you getting the gigs? Well, you can't blame the audience. You can't blame the people who are hiring for the gigs. You got to only just take ownership for yourself. And you lacked awareness, right? You lacked awareness of the unknown unknowns. And so you learn to ask the right questions and you learn to ask the right people. And I think you mentioned this part about how you just can't please everybody. Right? You got to please a select few who you really want to please and who will love being pleased by you. And that led you to an abundance mindset, and you had freedom. You were entertaining, you were teaching, and you were speaking to the people who you really wanted to. Right? You radiated your light brighter, and then I think you said the way you put it was the boats who you want to actually see you will actually see you.
The boats who I can actually help were able to see me.
Yeah, the boats you actually help.
Yeah.
And so then we spoke for quite a while about defining your own reality and then taking responsibility to do it. Right? So if you need to make a big decision, don't let others funnel you to where you don't want them to take you. You got to do it yourself. And then when we spoke about the limitations that people put on themselves, especially in the context of bamboo ceiling, but every minority, every group have their own ceilings and limitations, which they collectively place on themselves. You found that it was hard work and consistency that's always required to break through the ceilings. You gave an amazing metaphor or analogy of being stuck in that. You're bogged down and you're stuck in a hole and you just couldn't get out until someone guided you to just slow progress, and eventually you'll get out.
Yeah.
Slowly progress, and eventually you'll get there, and you don't even need all the things that you think you need. Ultimately, by saying the only way I'm getting out of this is with gear, is just putting a limitation on yourself. That's defining a false reality. And so if we're creating the ceilings ourselves, well, you ask the question, do you really want to accept that ceiling's there? Or maybe stop blaming the ceiling and take more responsibility for your own life. And then you shared this awesome part where you were saying, it's not just saying, well, that ceiling doesn't have to exist. It doesn't exist. So now I'm fine. It's like, no. You got to be so good that they can't ignore you. They only matter, right? Those ceilings and those limitations that others are placing on you only matter if you're not great. But if you're average, then yeah, sure, they're going to matter, right? But if you're great, they don't even place anything on you. And then there's this part which really resonated with me, where you're talking about parenting, especially as a father. It's like, I'm not here to protect you from failure. I'm here to help you uncover your gift. I need to help you with your curiosity and to find new things and adventure and what do you love. And there's this beautiful dichotomy between yourself and your wife where you really work as a team. I don't know if that was intentional, deliberate, and strategic for you guys to work as a team, or if you kind of just fell into those roles. But that intentional, deliberate, and strategic just seems to come into everything which you do. And while you said it was unconscious earlier on, and it's only conscious now, I can't imagine you would have had the success that you've had if you weren't always intentional, deliberate, and more strategic. And then you schedule everything, right? You discuss with your wife, everything's a team, and you always keep asking yourself, what's next? What's the next chapter? And before I ask you a question about chapters or a story, is there anything which you wanted to add to that as the core messages which you've shared in this episode?
I think the big message there with all of that is something I've said so many times that it's probably going to make everyone feel nauseous, me saying it again, but it's just recognize that reality is negotiable. It really is. And as you get better at your craft technically, as you get better at your ability to communicate as well, you'll gradually be able to negotiate whatever reality that it is that you desire. I really hope that you hold that belief as being true. And look, here's the reality of it, right? Whether that is true or not, would you rather live a life believing that reality is negotiable or believing that it's not?
Mm.
And I believe there are such things in life as useful beliefs and useless beliefs. And I think a useless belief that you can choose to believe is that reality actually is negotiable. And if you believe it and you really embody that belief, you live a very different life as compared to believing that nothing is negotiable. And yeah, so I think
it's no longer a useless belief, right?
Well, it's not useful. It's not a useful belief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. And so we're talking about these chapters, and there was a story you mentioned to me just before we started recording, and which I've heard through my wife previously.
Yeah.
When your dad sat you down and said, "You're no longer my son." That's a clickbait right into the story.
Yeah. Asian parents and their drama. This was about the time before I left for the US, and both my parents sat me down, and they didn't technically lead with that line. They led with the line. They did say that, but that wasn't the first thing they said. The first thing they said was, son, we need to have a very serious conversation with you. And I immediately thought, oh shit, someone's dying. Surely this is about this. And then they go, no one's dying, you idiot. And I go, well, why is this so serious? Why didn't you just sit me down here in the kitchen? We've never done this before. And then my mind immediately went to, you're both getting a divorce. This is what it is. And they go, no, we're not getting a divorce. And then this is what they said. They go, well, mum and dad are no longer going to be mum and dad. And I go, technically that's a divorce, right? And because I kept trying to assume, I was starting to panic. And then they go, look, mum and dad won't be mum and dad anymore. And in a way, you're not going to be our son. There's going to be a change in the dynamics of family. And I couldn't understand what was going on. And then they also said to me, my dad says, the wealth I've accumulated in life, and my dad's been a successful entrepreneur. Him and his brothers have owned Asian groceries, pharmacies, takeaway stores, etc. And he said, I wouldn't be getting any of the inheritance, and my brother won't be getting any either. And I really, this is, when I was like, reality is negotiable, right? Can we negotiate maybe 10%, and I could tell by the matter, it was very serious. So I stopped joking around with them. And my dad said something to me that really shocked me. And I felt that it was something that probably shocked them when I told them I want to be a magician. And my dad said to me, you know that your mother and I, we've been devout Buddhists now for the last 15 plus years of our lives. And son, I've seen so much suffering. I've been to India. We've toured India and seen so much suffering, same in Vietnam. I found a teacher, and your mother and I would like to take a different path in life. We want to give away our wealth to the Plum Village Association. We want to become monks. And you've got to understand, for me at this point, hearing this, it was so out of left field. I just, wait, what? You want to become monks? And I almost thought it was a joke. I could not believe what I was hearing. But then as the silence went on, it made sense. I saw my dad suffer. I saw my mum suffer a lot towards retirement. A lack of purpose in their life. A massive amount of time sitting there waiting for their children to come and spend time with them. Buying nicer cars because they felt like that was what was going to bring them more fulfillment. The accumulation of stuff. Competing with Joneses. Your uncle bought a boat. Should we think about buying a boat? I saw different forms of suffering starting to seep into their life. And I knew why my dad was doing this. It wasn't just the suffering that he saw in the world. It was personal suffering that he saw in himself. The deep lack of purpose. And my dad became a monk. He gave away everything. He owns 4 sets of clothing at the moment and a few leather sandals and a really nice pair of shoes that I bought him that he really didn't want me to buy for him. I bought him a really nice kind of outdoor, outback shoe that's really rugged, but barely wears it. That's all my dad has now. And my mum is, I sent my dad overseas and same with my mum to learn from their teachers. My mum learned from a different teacher. My dad learned from someone that, people may know, Thầy Thích Nhất Hạnh is who my dad learned from in Thailand. So my dad spent years there with Thầy Thích Nhất Hạnh, learning the ways of meditation, learning the philosophy of Buddhism, the lessons from Buddhism. And he now owns nothing. And I've never seen my dad so happy. I've never seen him and my mum so happy. So I bought my dad this house and, they didn't want any of it. So what I did in the end was I helped them acquire a block of land, and now they have a little meditation center here in South Australia where people come up every weekend and they teach people how to breathe, how to meditate, how to find stillness, how to find purpose outside of the material world, and how to ease their suffering. And that's what my dad does. And it's amazing. And it came at such a perfect time in my life because that was immediately before I was about to go to the US and build my career. And I'd become very materialistic, still feel that I suffer from that in my life today. But my dad is this beautiful, constant reminder that happiness, fulfillment does not come from things. It doesn't. And he continually teaches me. I see him on a weekly basis now, and I'm back in Adelaide, and it's no longer like a father and son. He's a teacher to me now. I call him in Vietnamese. The word we use is thầy, and thầy means teacher. And he was right. True to what the clickbait title you said is that I'm in a way no longer his son. I'm now a student of his. And that's kind of how I've always viewed it in a way, I guess. But yeah. So there's that.
That's beautiful. That's an incredible story.
Yeah.
Loved listening to every second of it. And there's one question I have from it.
Yeah.
You made the statement that happiness doesn't come from stuff. Where does it come from?
It's internal peace. Being at peace with yourself. And when your mind is more quiet, when it's less naggy, and this is my own interpretation of it at the moment, but it's why I've spent so much more time now being conscious of breathing. It sounds so basic. It slightly makes the younger version of me that's still kind of in my head want to die a little, but it's just the truth. It's being more conscious of my breath, being more intentional in my actions and my words with those around me. Just being able to have more stillness in my mind. It's not so hyperactive anymore.
Yeah. Beautiful. All right. And on that note, I'm going to thank you for this incredible conversation.
Yeah, no worries.
And on behalf of everyone who's listening, I'm sure that everyone who's been listening along has really enjoyed every moment of this, as hopefully as much as I have. I always love hearing you speak, and I always love our conversations. So thank you, Vin.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Harry. Cheers.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Success with Purpose, and I also hope that you feel capable to apply some of the perspectives and learnings from this episode in your own life. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to like and subscribe below. And until next time, live with purpose.